Mock, yeah, ing, yeah, bird, yeah, 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 mockingbird. Now everybody, have you heard?
So apparently I've been pegged as the go-to guy for young adult literature, despite the fact that I only review one young adult series with any regularity, and regularity is in quotation marks there, and it's a decade-old one at that. And yet I have gotten multiple requests for my thoughts on Suzanne Collins' novel The Hunger Games, which has been adapted into a movie that is set to be released next month. Well, who am I to let my viewers down? So I picked up a copy and got to reading. Warning, there will be heavy spoilers from this point forward. Now, I had never really bothered to look into this book before now, so all I knew about it going into it was that it was about a girl who gets caught up in a deadly arena sport with 24 kids, and they go in and only one comes out alive, and that people weren't sure if it was fair to call it a battle royale ripoff or not. What nobody informed me of beforehand was just how off the wall goofy the whole thing is. The world in which this book takes place is colorful, nonsensical, and often comic booky, but not good comic booky. I mean Silver Age Jimmy Olsen marries a gorilla comic booky. Okay, so in the world of this book, there was a war that obliterated the United States and split it into 13 districts in the capital. Each district focuses on a single industry, I'll get back to that, and each has to offer tribute, one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18, every year for the Hunger Games, a public spectacle in a miles-long outdoor arena where the kids have to kill each other off until only one survives. The reason for this is that there was an apparent rebellion nearly a century ago that resulted in the 13th district getting nuked and the other districts, even the ones that supposedly supported the capital, forced to pay tribute or face the capital's wrath. I'll get back to that. So the capital is the big bad central government taking advantage of the workforces, but here's the thing. It's a fucking circus. Everyone is surgically altered and their skin is dyed to look like the cast of Doug while they wear the latest in Oompa Loompa fashions. Even the most modest of citizens have rainbow-colored wigs and golden eyeliner. Even after a century, fashion would never evolve into such freakish heights. But it doesn't just end with how the capital looks, it's also how it functions. Technology is a mishmash of science fiction staples like force fields to complete impossible fantasies like coal-powered trains that go up to 250 miles per hour. During the war, the capital created a bunch of mutated animals to give them an edge, like super killer wasps and the mockingjay you see on the cover of the book, a bird capable of repeating entire conversations that it manages to overhear. I was ready to read about some oppressive state, but I was caught completely off guard when that oppressive state turned out to be the Legion of Doom. This is 1984 by Circus Olay. Now, this aspect of the story isn't necessarily a bad thing, depending on how the rest of the story plays off it. But frankly, the world of the Hunger Games fails at any practical cohesion. I should point out that I have not read up on any of the other books in the series, and I'm certain someone's going to pipe up and say, "Oh, that was explained in Catching Fire or Mockingjay." But most of my points, I feel, can't simply be hand-waved away with further exposition. These games have been going on for over 70 years now, and none of the districts have realized that the capital's threat is completely hollow. Each district provides a a distinct resource that the capital requires for its own survival, and there's no apparent spreading of these responsibilities between the districts. For example, District 12 is the coal district. No other district does coal, and District 12 doesn't do anything else. If District 12 were to rebel against the Hunger Games and the capital blew it up, boom, no more coal. Then how would your 250-mile-per-hour trains work? The Hunger Games have been going on for 74 years. This whole infrastructure of this world seems shoddy at best, and not one person in 3/4 of a century picked up on that? Maybe I'm missing something here, but I feel like this world lacks any realistic conflict, not at all helped by the bubblegum aesthetics. It's therefore hard to take the situations the book presents us seriously. It's hard to get invested in the Hunger Games itself if the reasons for the Hunger Games continuing to exist is bullshit. Not that the book seems to be all that interested in investing us in said games. This is where I have to talk about this book in comparison to Battle Royale, though for the record, I don't think this is a ripoff. I can totally believe that Collins constructed this plot separately, but comparing the two books does bring some issues to light. I think the biggest thing is that Battle Royale had an ensemble cast of characters, whereas The Hunger Games is first and foremost the story of the female District 12 tribute, Katniss. In Battle Royale, all the participants have names, personalities, and goals. In The Hunger Games, 3/4 of the participants are completely anonymous. And since we only have a first-person perspective, the majority of the deaths are off-screen, so to speak. Battle Royale is about a horror subjected onto a group of people, while The Hunger Games is about a horror subjected onto one person, and most of those other people don't really count. Soon after finishing this book, I was in a Barnes & Noble and stumbled on a promotional book for the film, which listed all the tributes. And even in a book about the tributes, these characters remained unnamed. They couldn't even be bothered to give these guys token names for the film, even if they weren't going to be mentioned on screen. This turns these characters into simple cannon fodder, nameless numbers whose sole purpose in the narrative is to die and not dwell on. In Battle Royale, even the weakest characters still felt like people, and their deaths were equally as tragic. That aspect never creeps into the Hunger Games. The horror of these games aren't really present. Maybe that isn't what this book is about, maybe, but then I don't know how we're supposed to take it. An action piece? Well, on that note, all the actual violence in this book is brief and without detail. We don't linger on the horror of it, nor do we have fun with it. It's just something that happens, and it's not all that suspenseful. Well, no, okay, there was one scene that was suspenseful. The final conflict between Katniss, the other District 12 tribute Peeta, and the other remaining tribute. We wait. We know this is the last conflict, the last time the Hunger Games draws blood. And then, zombie werewolves show up. No, not even kidding. Completely out of the blue. Fucking zombie werewolves. It sounds like a robot chicken gag, and completely diffuses the situation by reminding us just how bizarre and nonsensical this world is. So yes, this book is unrealistic. The central evil government protagonist is a joke. There are no real moral dilemmas presented in the killing of other people. Most of the characters that are in the conflict with the main ones are faceless cannon fodder. The action is weak and poorly paced, and there are more laugh-out-loud moments than there are frightening or touching ones. Pretty much every bit of praise I've heard about this book is, incorrect. I read a very different book than all of the reviews I've read. So yeah, you've come to the conclusion that this is a negative review. And then you see how much time we have on this video and wonder where the hell I'm going with this. Well, you see, while it's true that I can't agree with most of the praise heaped upon this book, in actuality, I still really liked it. I just like it for reasons that are completely alien to everyone else's. Probably because I started reading it in a completely different manner than everyone else. Where most people took this book as a serious piece of drama, I read it as a fun farce, a wonderful parody of serious drama that I really dug. Okay, I took the book seriously at first and found myself getting frustrated by the hokey pathos and weak setting. Then there was that moment of revelation, that moment that I had been reading it all wrong. That moment was when the character of Haymitch Abernathy, a middle-aged alcoholic and winner of one of the past Hunger Games, stumbles into a dining car, asks if he missed dinner, then immediately vomits, and then immediately passes out, falling into the puddle he just made. It was that moment of gross-out slapstick that flipped the switch in my brain to, this is pretty shitty drama, to, this is a fun, sarcastic romp. Oh, I can't say if this was Suzanne Collins' intent for her book, but that's how it opened up to me, and it was all the better for it. Suddenly being able to look at this story from the side of sarcasm and comedy gave me a bigger appreciation for the allegory that this book is. I've heard the capital government compared to things like 1984, but looking at this as a denouncement of corrupt government practices is going about it all wrong. Instead of looking towards the statist aspects of the book, we need to look at this book's true inspiration: television. As Collins herself said, she got the idea for the book by switching back and forth between a reality TV show and news footage of the war in Iraq and having the two blur in her mind. While it's easy to read The Hunger Games itself as a mixture of war games and reality television, it becomes more and more apparent that the entire world in this book is an allegory for television. After all, after all, the Hunger Games do not begin and end in the arena, but start long before in each individual district at the selection of the tributes and doesn't end. Ever. At the end of the book, long after the other tributes have been killed and they've been removed from their arena and healed from their injuries, they are still playing the game, keeping up appearances because they are being watched. All of the characters are being perpetually watched. There is an implication that there are hidden cameras all throughout this story. It's a given that they are in the arena, since this is being broadcast all over the country. However, these cameras are so well hidden that none of the characters find any of them. There can't be less than millions in that arena. You think someone would spot at least one, but it never happens. Later, Katniss discovers that she's being spied on in her tribute complex in the capital, implying that the cameras extend well beyond the arena. And thus, Katniss, Peeta, and their allies have to keep acting to please the capital before and after the games are over. Abernathy isn't actually a comedy drunk. We learn he's much slyer than that. He is merely playing the role of a comedy drunk with perfect comedic timing. But here's the thing, even when people of the capital, like the President Snow, are fully aware of our protagonist's true motivations, they never break facade either. So even President Snow is an actor. There's a scene where he's clearly straining to keep up appearances. In fact, virtually every character in this book are actors. The other participants, the capital officials, the district citizens, even the Hunger Games audience is acting out this colorful television show, and all seem to be aware of it, but are unable to break the cycle and show their true selves out of fear. Well, fear of what, though? Not the capital's wrath, and that's as in the joke as everyone else. Perhaps a fear of acknowledging their own existence, acknowledging that they live in a fuck-up, post-apocalyptic existence, and the only way to cope with it is to put on a show, to become a living, breathing, three-dimensional television program full of technicolor pop and circumstance, playing 24/7. This is most obvious in the Hunger Games, as the key to survival is to put on a good show. See, if you play a good character in the Hunger Games, sponsors will give you helpful gifts dropped in by silver parachutes. In the case of Katniss and Peeta, it's playing out a fake love story for the masses, even though Katniss has no genuine affection for Peeta, or really anyone for that matter besides her sister. When considering this new avenue, then that this book is about people in a perpetual state of acting, and not about the actual horror of the Hunger Games, then the single-person narrative of the book makes a lot more sense. Katniss is about as far removed from the system as any character can be. She leaves her district to hunt on a regular basis, and is pretty much a wild girl. She doesn't need any training to survive the Hunger Games. She comes with those skills pretty much from the beginning. Therefore, the story arc is not about Katniss surviving the games. There's really no doubt in that. But that of her adapting to this television lifestyle, learning the ability to act along with everyone else. Perhaps the other two books don't work with these thematic elements. I don't know, and I don't really want to read them to find out. I'd rather not find the elements of this book that I liked being thrown out the window. In any case, I found myself rather enjoying The Hunger Games with its allegories and brushing up against, but not actually breaking the fourth wall. Again, these seem to be completely different reasons than most people enjoy this book for. So if you're looking for an intense thriller, or a story about the horrors of violence, or a story with a big bad government as the villain, you might actually want to look elsewhere. But that's not what The Hunger Games that's not what The Hunger Games delivers. But if you want a fun puzzle of a story, yeah, I do recommend this book.